Hello, welcome back to Sterling Armory's Oakeshott Typology. This is episode 13, and although we covered all of the blade types already for episode 1 through 12, I highly recommend if you're not familiar with the Oakeshott Typology and you want to learn more about it, please go back and look at all those videos, episodes 1 through 12 that cover all the blade types from type 10 all the way to type 22. And just as a quick summary, that music's a little too loud. As a quick summary, the Oakeshott Typology is a nomenclature that's used to classify medieval swords. That's today it's very commonly used. The typology itself was a study from Ewart Oakeshott, studying the evolution of swords through the medieval times. So we covered all the blade types. So now we're going on to the crossguards. And he dives into a lot of crossguard discussion, and we use two books. So first book we look at is Records of the Medieval Sword. He does show the images of the crossguard types, but he doesn't go into detail at all in that book for crossguards, like he does with sword types or blade types. But in his other book, Swords in the Age of Chivalry, he does a chapter 4. It's a real deep dive into crossguards, so we're going to cover that today. So real quick, the first point he makes is that there's a common misconception that medieval swords can be aged and classified by age based on their guard types. And he's quick to point out that all the evidence shows that's not true. So unlike other swords in other cultures, if we were some blades, you can look at a sword. So if you look at a Japanese blade and you look at the fittings, you can really, the guards and the pommels and all the different fittings on the handle, you can usually age that sword based on that. Whereas with medieval swords, you can't do that. So you could have one type of crossguard that can appear in the 1000s, and that same crossguard can be on a much more modern sword, in the 1500s or 1400s. So just be very careful. I guess what Oakeshott is saying to anyone studying swords is to be very careful of using the crossguard by itself to age a blade or to determine what type of blade it is, because that's just not a good thing. So what you want to do is you look at crossguard. You want to look at my cat just went by, so hair just plucked in my face. But look at the crossguards along with the rest of the blade, the pommel, everything to age a blade appropriately. So real quick, he does 12 different, what he calls styles of crossguards. And style 1 through 7 pretty much appear through the whole medieval time period. So we're going to cover 1 through 7 today. 8 through 12 tend to only appear in group 2. So what that means, the Oakeshott's blade typology can be split into 2 big groups. Group 1, which are blades that have lenticular cross-section. They're older blades. They usually go from the 1000s all the way up to, I'm trying to remember the transition date. It's somewhere in the 1300s, I believe. But it's when medieval society changes from predominantly chain armor to predominantly plate armor. So there is a transition there. And swords of group 1 are pre-plate armor for the most part. Swords of group 2 are post-plate armor. So, but styles of guards 1 through 7, which we're about to look at, are on all of them. There are a few, again, so styles 8 through 12 we'll do next. That'll be the next video, but that'll be mostly on group 2 swords. So real quick, I have some images. So the images, the drawings, I should say, of each of the guard styles is directly from Oakeshott's book. And then I have some images of my own blades that have versions of those types of guards. So let's bring them up. So still have cat hair floating by me. So the first guard style is style 1, and I'm going to read directly from Oakeshott's book to cover that style, and then we'll do a little bit of reading for each style, and then some images. So there's a couple different versions of this, but style 1, basically it's a simple straight bar, and some of the bars, so just style 1 by itself, the bar kind of tapers out on each side. Most of the time it's a rectangular bar, but it can be circular and occasionally octagonal, but it's usually rectangular cross section like it's shown there on the image. That little square there is the cross section. So it's usually square around for the most part. Then style 1A is basically a more plain version of that the ends don't taper. That's really it. So real quick, I had to search for blade. I don't make this style of guard often, and it's very common on a lot of Viking time period later blades, where the ends kind of are very pointy and very long, and I just don't make those blades that often. Although again, this guard style appears all throughout history. Usually when I'm making guards, I usually make them more than a plain bar. So, because making plain bars, so the pointy ones are cool, but a lot of customers would prefer more detailed guards. So I don't do this style too often. So I was able to find one. So this one, it fits the category, but it is ever so slightly curved towards the blade, which technically would not put it in this category. But it's the closest one to this category that I have. It's hard to tell, but basically the guard swells around the blade, and then the ends taper, not necessarily in height in this image here, but they taper in width to the point. So that is type 1. Again, very common on type 10 blades, if you follow the topology. Type 10 and type 11 blades, very common. The next style, this is one of my favorite styles to do for Group 1 blades. So style 2. So real quick, for style 2, Oakeshott says it's more elaborate. The central portion is strong and solidly rectangular, and then the arms can waste out and then re-expand at the ends. So the section is most often square, but where it wastes out, it can be rounded or octagonal. So this is a very fun guard to do. I like doing this guard a lot, so I have a couple examples. But yeah, for group swords in Group 1, so that's type 10 blades all the way up to type 14 blades. 14 wouldn't have this, so let me correct that. So type 10 blades all the way to type 13 blades. I like doing this style guard. I also like doing this style guard on falchions. It's also very commonly found on falchions. And it's just overall fun to make. And it looks really nice. So real quick, so some examples that I've made of style 2. So the left one is a two-handed falchion. It's hard to tell there, but it's, again, a square cross section where the blade is, and then it tapers or wastes in, and then flares back out at the tips. And both of those actually in the wasting and in the flare back out at the ends are octagonal, which is also very common in this type. So I have a falchion on the left, and I believe that's a type 12 that I did on the right. So again, very fun guard to do. Next type of guard, so that's style 2. Now we're going to style 3. So style 3 is not far off of style 1. So basically he says for style 3, a simple as style 1, solid stout bar. This time it's a flat rectangular section instead of being round or square cross section. And it's very short. So style 3, I think I've made maybe 1 or 2 of these for some Viking era type blades, but I don't have any images of that right now. Again, most customers want something a bit more fancy, but style 3 is very common, especially in that late Viking era type time period. I believe the style gets very popular again in like the late 1300s, early 1400s as well. So like type 16s, a lot of type 16s have this style guard, especially type 16 longswords. Okay, so style 4. So style 4, here's another one of my favorites for all sorts of blades. You can find this style all throughout history in the medieval time period. So Oakeshott swords are similar type 1, but it has down at the ends or downward angled, either turned down or rounded off at the end. So there is a lot of, when we go to the other guards in Group 2, that we're not covering today. But there's a lot that look like this, but the biggest difference in this one compared to the other ones we'll talk about later is that the cross section on this guard remains square or rectangular or even round through the whole guard. So that's quite important because a lot of guards that I do for my Group 2 blades, for Type 18s and 15s, you'll see a much more elaborate cross section other than just rectangular and square. So to go back and find some ones that were just the Style 4 that were just rectangular or square was actually a little difficult, but I did find some. So two of these are both relatively recent makes of mine, but these are, the cross section of that guard is square, whereas a lot of folks might see that and think, wait a minute, isn't that a Type 8 or a Type 9 guard? So no, we'll see why later on. But basically what keeps these as the Style 4 is that it's, again, a rectangular cross-section in that bar, not a hexagonal or octagonal cross-section. So those are both fun blades to make. Again, I like making this blade type a lot, or this guard type a lot. And there's very little difference between this guard type and one that we'll see later on, just as I mentioned, the cross-section. But again, very fun guard type to make. It's very commonly attributed to Type 15s. Yeah. So the next style. So Style 5, Oakeshott says, so it somewhat resembles a bow tie. The arms are very flat and in plane and then broad in elevation. So that means they're very tall, but very flat guards. And they widen at the ends. So this is, and he also says this is perhaps more decorative variations in this style compared to any other style that we see for the Group 1 blades. So the bow tie guard, also very popular in later swords as well. So Type 16s see a lot of this. A lot of Irish blades see this, and it just so happens that oh no, my Irish blades go next. A different type of bow tie, which we'll get to in a second. So both of these blades happen to have black grips, but and also very similar type of a Gothic Type 18, Type 15 sword. The one on the left is the one that was a version of the one from the Royal Armories. And the one on the right is one that's basically a simplified version of that. But both of those are the bow tie guards, so they wrap around the blade and then get really flat and thin as they go out. So that takes us to Type 6. Is that right? Yeah. So Type 6. Oh, I passed it. Let me go back to Type 6. Here we go. So basically, it's a variation of Type 5, which was the bow tie. But instead of having a straight bow tie, this is a bow tie that curves downward towards the blade. Other than that, it's really the same. So same as also as Type 5, where they're a bit more decorative than most guards of the type. So Type 6 is the one I was mentioning, is very common in Irish guards. Also, Type 5 is as well. And it just so happens that both the examples I currently have quickly at my disposal were both Irish blades. So again, it's hard to tell on the arming sword there on the right, but it does waist in a little bit, and then it gets very thin and flat towards the end. It's a bit more obvious on the longsword version there, and again, there's just some decoration there. Oh, and I didn't mention this earlier. So the drawings, we'll go back to the drawings. So the drawings themselves, and Oakeshott mentions this, he doesn't add any decoration to them. So a lot of decoration, all sorts of different types of decoration can happen on any type of guard. It just so happens that 5 and 6 tends to be more decorated. My guess is because they're larger surface areas and more room to work, right? That's my guess. But yeah. So on to the last one of this type, last in this group, which is Type 7. So Oakeshott says, so in elevation, when you're looking at it straight on the top image there, it looks like a curved version of Type 1. But it's quite different. So when you look at it from the top, so the bottom image there, the blade is it's a much broader profile, and is almost ribbon-shaped in profile. And then the ends are generally plain, although they can roll up sometimes as well. So this is another one I don't do too often, again, because that cross-section on this remains rectangular. Usually when I make guards like this, the cross-section becomes more complicated than just a regular rectangle. But I have done some like this. So here's some examples. The one on the right is I had to really dig back for that one. That one is probably 2012 or 2013 when I made it, and I held on to it personally, and then I sold it much later. And then the one on the left there, same type guard. Basically, it's hard to tell from this side image, but if you looked at them from the top, they're pretty wide guards, and then they follow that rectangular cross section all the way to the ends. So yeah, so that is Oakeshott's guards from. Let me make sure that's the last slide I had. Yep. So that's Oakeshott's guards styles 1 through 7, and we'll do style 8 through 12 on the next type. Again, the tough part with medieval guards is that the guards themselves don't help classify blades, because these guards can exist almost on any type of blade throughout all of the medieval history. So what he's trying to do here is, and he mentioned it in his book here, is he tries to pare down guards in styles. So basically, almost every medieval guard will fit in one of these guard styles. However, there's always outliers. There's always ones that are going to be a little different. But most of historical pieces that you'll find will have some sort of guard in one of these styles. It'll just have the decorations will just be different. So he doesn't consider any decorative touches a part of the style. So that's separate. So, but yeah, that's it for the first part of our Oakeshott guards. And so again, we'll just do one more on guards, and then after guards, we will dive into pommels. He has a lot to say about pommels. There's like 34 different types of pommels, I think. So that's going to take us a bit to get through. There's a lot more variation in pommels across history than there is guards. And after that, there's a couple other things. So he also goes into sword families, which is quite fun and interesting. We might finish our Oakeshott series with that. But yeah, so a lot more to come. Hope you're enjoying these videos. If you like our videos, please like and subscribe. Please comment to join in the conversation. And we will catch you guys next time. Thanks.